They say you find out who people really are in a crisis. When the sun is shining, anyone can be a good partner. Anyone can buy flowers on an anniversary. Anyone can say I love you when the bills are paid and everyone is healthy. But when the storm hits, when the diagnosis comes in, when the surgery is 8 hours long, when you physically cannot walk, that is when the mask slips. And sometimes, what you find underneath that mask is terrifyingly empty. Today's story is about a woman who had to lose a part of her body to gain clarity about her life. At just 28 years old, she was diagnosed with an aggressive form of bone cancer. She underwent a brutal, life-altering surgery to replace her femur with a metal rod. And while she was lying in the recovery room groggy from anesthesia, paralyzed by pain, and terrified for her future, her perfect husband looked at the small snack the nurse had brought her, and asked the question that ended their marriage. "Are you going to eat that, because I'm starving?" It wasn't about the cookie. It was about the massive chasm of empathy that the cookie revealed. We are going to talk about medical abandonment, the phenomenon of weaponized incompetence, and why sometimes the tumor isn't the only toxic thing you need to cut out of your life to survive. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are unpacking a story that is going to make your blood boil, but it's a necessary conversation. This is a story for anyone who has ever felt lonely in a relationship. For anyone who has made excuses for a partner who just couldn't handle the hard stuff. And for anyone who has ever wondered if their partner loves them, or just loves what they provide. If you believe that in sickness and in health is a promise, not a suggestion, hit that like button. It helps us share these stories and validate the survivors. And if you're new here, subscribe. We dive deep into the complicated psychology of relationships when the going gets tough. Let's get into the story. To understand the betrayal, we first have to understand the illusion. Let's meet our protagonist. She is 28 years old. Young, vibrant, career-driven. She met her husband, let's call him Mark, when they were just 23. They grew up together. And for 5 years, on the surface, everything looked perfect. Mark is the kind of guy every mother wants for her daughter. He is good on paper. He has a stable job. He doesn't drink or do drugs. He's clean. He's polite to the neighbors. He remembers birthdays. Her friends told her she was lucky. Her mom told her, count your blessings. He's a steady one. But there were cracks. There are always cracks if you look close enough. We call this performative goodness. Mark was great at the easy stuff. He was great when the script was simple. But whenever real emotional heavy lifting was required, say, a family death or a career crisis, Mark would sort of check out. He would freeze. She brushed these cracks off. She told herself, he's just sensitive. He feels things deeply. He's not good with conflict. She filled in the gaps for him. She did the emotional labor. She managed his feelings. Then, 2 months ago, the universe decided to test that dynamic. She started having pain in her knee. She thought it was a gym injury. It wasn't. The diagnosis came back. Chondrosarcoma, bone cancer. The tumor was aggressive. It was in her knee and had spread up into her femur. This wasn't a take a pill and rest for a week situation. This was a, we need to slice your leg open, remove your bone, and replace it with titanium situation. An 8-hour surgery. Months of learning how to walk again. The looming threat of death. This is the moment where a husband is supposed to become a warrior. But Mark became a ghost. When a crisis of this magnitude hits, your support system acts like a reflex. It reveals who is truly in your corner. For our protagonist, her village sprang into action immediately. Her girlfriends were superheroes. They didn't wait to be asked. They organized meal trains. They came over to clean the floors. They researched the best pillows for leg surgery recovery. They sat with her and let her cry. Her parents went into general mode. They navigated the insurance nightmare. They found the best orthopedic oncologist in the state. They handled the logistics. And Mark shut down. But he didn't just go quiet. He retreated into a world of digital distraction. He spent hours on the couch, scrolling through what she calls brain-rot Instagram reels. Just endless, mindless scrolling while his wife was researching survival rates next to him. Whenever she tried to talk about her fear, the terrifying reality that she might lose her leg or her life, Mark would do something incredibly manipulative, perhaps unconsciously. He would start crying. He would break down. He would say, "I can't bear the thought of losing you. This is so hard for me." And suddenly, the dynamic flipped. Suddenly, the woman with cancer was comforting the healthy man. She found herself rubbing his back, saying, "It's okay, honey. I'm going to be fine. Don't cry." She was managing his anxiety while facing her own mortality. She kept making excuses for him. We all do this when we love someone. We gaslight ourselves. She thought, "He loves me so much, he's paralyzed by fear." It's actually sweet, in a way. But fear is an emotion. Love is an action. In the weeks leading up to the surgery, her mobility declined rapidly. She was on crutches. She was in agony. She physically couldn't do household chores. She had to ask Mark for everything. "Can you please unload the dishwasher? Can you please feed the dog? Can you please bring me a glass of water?" He did it, if asked, but he never anticipated her needs. He never looked at his wife struggling on crutches and thought, "I should probably handle dinner tonight." He waited until she asked, and often, he would sigh. This is passive neglect. It is the exhaustion of having to be the project manager of your own care while you are fighting for your life. The day of the surgery arrived. Mark drove her to the hospital. He held her hand in the pre-op room. He played the part of the devoted husband. He kissed her forehead and said, "I'll be right here when you wake up." She went under. 8 hours. The surgeons cut open her leg, removed a significant portion of her femur, and installed a massive metal implant. When she woke up in the recovery room, she was in a state most of us can't imagine. She was groggy from heavy anesthesia. She was nauseous. And despite the morphine, she was in excruciating pain. Her leg was immobilized, wrapped in thick bandages. She was helpless. The nurses, who were absolute angels, checked her vitals and brought her a small snack to help settle her stomach and raise her blood sugar. A little packet of graham crackers and some cheese. They placed it on the tray table next to her bed. Then, they let Mark in. He walked to her bedside. He looked at her. He asked, "How are you feeling?" She mumbled that she was in pain, that she was tired. And then, his eyes drifted. He looked away from his wife's face and focused on the tray table. He looked at the crackers. And then, he looked at her and said the words that would ring in her ears for the rest of her life. "Are you going to eat those? Because I'm starving." Let's just pause and let that sink in. He had been sitting in a waiting room for 8 hours. He could have gone to the cafeteria. He could have used a vending machine. He could have ordered a pizza. Instead, he waited until he was in the recovery room, staring at his wife who just had a limb reconstructed, and he coveted her graham crackers. He didn't ask, "Can I help you eat?" He didn't ask, "Do you think you can keep food down?" He saw a resource food. He felt a need hunger, and he centered himself immediately. She looked at him. She was too weak to argue. She just pushed the tray toward him and whispered, "No, take it." And he did. He sat there, next to her bed, eating her recovery snack, scrolling on his phone. While she lay there with a metal bone, hungry and nauseous, she says, That was the exact moment something in me snapped. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. I looked at him and realized, this man is not a partner. He is a dependent. That cookie was the catalyst, but the behavior that followed confirmed it. She spent 2 weeks in the hospital recovering. This is a time when a partner should be present, advocating for the patient, learning how to help with physical therapy. Mark's behavior didn't improve. In fact, it got worse. He visited every other day or so, and when he did visit, he complained. He complained about how tired he was from work. He complained about the long drive to the hospital. He complained about the traffic. He complained that the hospital chairs were uncomfortable. Meanwhile, her friends pooled their money to upgrade her to a private room so she could sleep better. Her parents took shifts, sleeping in the chair next to her bed so she wouldn't wake up alone. The contrast was blinding. Strangers, nurses, and friends were treating her with more tenderness and sacrifice than the man who had vowed to cherish her. When the discharge day finally came, she made a decision. She didn't go home to the house she shared with Mark. She couldn't bear the thought of being immobile in a house where she would have to beg for water. She asked her parents to take her to their house. She told her parents everything. About the lack of help. About the crying. About the cookie. Her parents, who had loved Mark like a son, were furious. But they supported her instantly. From the safety of her childhood bedroom, she called a lawyer. She filed for divorce. When she told Mark it was over, he did exactly what you'd expect a man like him to do. He didn't get angry. He didn't accept responsibility. He cried. He begged. He pleaded. I love you. I can change. I didn't know it was this bad. Give me another chance. He played the victim card again. How can you leave me when I'm trying so hard? But this time, his tears didn't work. She felt nothing. No guilt. No sadness. Just nothing. She says, I don't hate him. I don't think he's malicious. I think he is deeply self-absorbed, emotionally stunted, and fundamentally incapable of being the partner an adult woman needs. Now, this story raises some massive questions. Our protagonist is struggling to understand why this happened. Let's break it down, because these answers apply to so many relationships. Question 1. Is this freezing under stress, or is it a character flaw? Many people defend partners like Mark by saying, oh, everyone handles trauma differently. Maybe he just froze. Here is the difference. A partner who freezes under stress might be clumsy. They might say the wrong thing, they might be anxious. But they don't eat your food, they don't complain about the traffic. Freezing is an involuntary reaction. Complaining about your commute to a cancer ward is a choice. It is a conscious decision to prioritize your minor inconvenience over your partner's major trauma. That isn't fear. That is selfishness. Question 2. Can he change? Mark is promising to change. He says he will do better. But here is the reality of weaponized incompetence. Mark spent 5 years benefiting from a dynamic where he didn't have to be competent because his wife did everything. He isn't offering to change because he understands her pain. He is offering to change because he is losing his appliance. He is losing the person who manages his life. Real change isn't tears. Real change is action. Real change would have been him showing up at her parents' house not to argue about the divorce but to mow the lawn, to bring groceries, to offer to drive her to physical therapy without being asked. He isn't doing that. He's just using words. And words are cheap. Question 3. The gender gap in medical abandonment. We need to talk about a brutal statistic here. A 2009 study published in the journal Cancer found that men are 6 times more likely to leave a partner after a diagnosis of a serious illness like cancer or MS than women are. It is a documented phenomenon called partner abandonment in patients with serious illness. Why? Because society socializes women to be caregivers. When a husband gets sick, the wife steps up. She becomes the nurse, the secretary, the cheerleader. It's expected, but men are often socialized to be provided for. When the provider, the wife, becomes the patient, the dynamic breaks. The man feels neglected because his needs aren't being met, even though his partner is literally fighting for her life. Mark fits this profile perfectly. He loved her when she was fun and capable. He checked out the moment she became work. The protagonist ends her story with a sentence that gave me chills. She writes, "I'm terrified, I'm exhausted, and I'm in pain. But I am strangely relieved. I feel free." That relief, that is your answer. That relief is your body telling you that the burden of managing him was heavier than the burden of the cancer. Think about that. She has a metal femur. She has to relearn how to walk. She has chemotherapy looming. And yet, she feels lighter because she dropped the 180-pound dead weight of her husband. She realized that if he folded at the first major hurdle at age 28, how would he handle it when she's 50, or 70, or if they had children? He showed her his capacity. He showed her his ceiling. And it was too low. She didn't lose a husband. She lost a dependent. And in doing so, she regained her dignity. This is a heavy story, but it's a victorious one. It reminds us that nice guys aren't always good men. A good man doesn't eat your recovery cookie. A good man doesn't make you comfort him while you have a tumor. And a good man doesn't make you ask for water twice. I want to hear from you in the comments. This is a safe space. Have you ever experienced a partner checking out during a crisis? Did you endure the medical abandonment we talked about today? And what advice would you give to this brave woman as she starts her physical recovery and her divorce proceedings? Drop your thoughts below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people who might need to hear this message. Subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of relationships. You are a warrior. You beat the tumor. You can beat the divorce. Focus on your leg. Focus on walking. Walk away from him and never look back. Stay strong, trust your gut, and I'll see you in the next one.